Nama Bhajo, Hare Nama Bhajo, Narayana, Hare Narayana, Nanda, Nanda, Mukha.
Jai Sai Ram. We are here with Ruth Harris. Ruth is a lovely lady that is well known from those that are more veterans of our center that have been around for a little bit longer. And she's always energetic and has lots of great Swami stories. So we're very pleased you're sitting with us today, Ruth. And I'm going to cut you loose. Why don't you start with how you came to Swami? And welcome to the 95 Stories.
Well, Sai Ram, everybody. I came to Swami in a rather unusual fashion. I'm living in North Carolina in the mountains, and I was here in 1999. And I had been an atheist most of my life. I had left the church in the 11th grade, but I knew there was something else, but I couldn't find anything that made any sense to me at all. So I started looking around and taking courses, looking at a lot of metaphysical or spiritual literature, trying to see what I could learn. Well, a friend of mine in Murphy knew this and has a brother in Atlanta who I visited once, and he visited me just to be friends. And he called me one day and says, "Oh my gosh, Ruth, I think there's something you have to see." I went to Chodabai's house. I heard these things called budgeons, and he said they were amazing. He says, it just went right through. And he says, you've got to see this. He says, I saw footprints appear in the carpet. He says, it's magic. And he said, there's a Atlanta Sai Center is having a retreat down at Red Mountain. Come down, stay in my back room. You've got to see this. I think it's important for you. So I go down there, not knowing what I was getting into, and go to this retreat. And there are all these Atlanta people. And I looked at them, and there were like lights coming out of their eyes. And this budgeons went right through. I cried all the way home. It was so magical. And I said, I've got to go get back down there. Well, I would go down from North Carolina every week to budgeons. And then a woman by the name of Rusty said, come stay at my house and do seva. And I would do that. And I was getting more and more involved and learning more. Well, then somebody says, I'm going to India. You want to go? I don't think so. They said, just call the agency. So I called the travel agency, and they said, there is no room, none, no planes for the whole month. They're all filled. You can't go. I said, okay, well, that solves that. And I told them. They said, get on the waiting list. I said, why? They said, just call them back. So I called them back. And they said, oh, I'm glad you called back. The minute you hung up, a seat became available. We booked it for you. Oh my gosh, I'm going to India. So I go to India. I'm sitting in the ashram wondering why in the world I'm here. It was very uncomfortable on the floor with all these people. And this teacher with the big hair is walking around, and I didn't know I was there, but I said, learn, 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 learn. Well, about the third day, they were playing Arati, and I had waves and waves of what I call divinity, those inside goosebumps and out, and it was like the whole world changed. I said, there is a God. It was just like that. Well, I then knew, tears coming down my eyes. I could not believe the experience of what I had. What happened next is they told me about interviews, and you had these ribbons in 99. So what happened is I asked the Atlanta group, I said, can I have a ribbon? And they said, well, we'll vote on it, because I really wasn't a member. I just went down there a few times. And I said, okay, vote. Well, next to me in the room was the British Columbia women. And they said, oh, that's silly. Take our ribbon. So I took their ribbon and I put it on. And Atlanta came back to me, the center, and says, of course you can join our group. So I said, well, I now know he's God, so I shouldn't cheat and keep both ribbons. So I gave the ribbon back to the British Columbia people. And sure enough, it was a few days later, and my friend got an interview, and all the Atlanta people that were there, Tommy and Rusty and the whole group, went up for an interview. Well, I'm still feeling like they're going to resent me because this is very important and I'm really not a part of the group. But I went on up and I'm sitting there in front of before we go into the inner room for an interview, and I said, oh, I hope they don't resent me. I don't know what, and I really felt bad. And I had my head down, I looked up, and right there in front of me was the British Columbia people. I still get goosebumps because I would have gone no matter what. I was meant to be there. I was absolutely meant to be there. And that was the most amazing sign to me. So I went into the interview with full knowledge. And Swami did so many things in that interview. But without those stories, I went, as he was walking out of the interview room, I don't know what made me say it. I hadn't planned on it, but I went, Swami, I want to serve you. He turned around from the door and did one of those finger things. And to this day, people said what it meant, that he was redoing my destiny. I don't know. But I knew something happened. And I came back. It wasn't a few weeks later that I said, I have to learn more. And I moved from North Carolina to Atlanta to be able to learn more and more and be around Swami people. So there I was in the center, wondering when I should come back. And I used to give the ending prayer at the center. And I'd pick a songbook. I would open it up, still wondering if it was time to leave Atlanta. And Vibhuti would appear. And the first time, it was all over the book. So I would show everybody and get them Vibhuti. And the next week, there was less. I'd show somebody next to me. And I got less. Every time I showed anybody, it would get less. There was a big lesson there. That was for me, to anchor me, and it was talking to me. And I needed it. And it worked, because there's no way I was going to leave anywhere with that happening. I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I was having all the symptoms. I went to a doctor down there, one Thai doctor, who says, we'll try to ignore it. And because I used to run nonprofits, I went up to the Alzheimer's Association, and they had me for 2 years do public speaking. I was in Good Housekeeping. I was on magazine quoted. I was on the newspapers. I was on TV. And as the symptoms would progress on the early onset stage, and the Alzheimer's Association and the one of head of counseling was following me. I had an MRI. I had a neurologist. I knew the symptoms as they came. I mean, they fit. And then one day I had this dream, and Swami came to me in this picture frame. And like Harry Potter, he was walking around this picture frame, and I knew I had taken the picture because I was a photographer. And it was a graphic, and his head came off. And it rolled like a snowball, getting bigger and bigger towards me. And then his head appeared on his body, and he said, see, you don't need a head. I have your head. I was doing some speaking and figured I would just walk around Atlanta eventually, not remembering anything. And Dr. Sam said, you know, you're getting better. I said, I'm seeing that my symptoms are going away. I went to another neurologist. They did a lot of tests, and they said, there's nothing there. Even the MRI, gone. And then I hadn't heard of Swami curing in a dream. So I talked to some of the Thai folks, and they said, yes, it is in the literature that he can cure in dreams. That was one of the events. So.
Wow, that's an awesome story.
That was 10 years ago. So obviously I don't have Alzheimer's. I'd be dead.
Yeah.
Say, Ram.